Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we are looking at an absolutely incredible true story that's going to completely redefine how we think about crisis management. We're exploring the life of Melvyn C.C. Valenzuela. Now, Melvyn is a top-tier security expert. We're talking about a guy who spent 40 years mastering corporate defense at global giants like Toyota. He was literally the guy you called to build impenetrable systems. But what happens when a master of security faces an enemy he absolutely cannot outsmart? Okay, let's dive into this. The source material we're unpacking today, the third miracle, details the ultimate paradigm shift. It takes us from a life defined by intense human control and strategic tactics straight into a raw, unfiltered look at total spiritual submission. Section 1. The ultimate security breach. Throughout his career, Melvyn handled ambushes, corporate espionage, the whole shebang. But the breach that ultimately took him down, it bypassed every single protocol he ever designed. Let's look at the timeline. At exactly 14:30 hours on June 28, 2025, Melvyn suffered a catastrophic CVD bleed in his left thalamus. His heart stopped completely. For 2.5 hours, he was clinically absent. Then, at 1700 hours, right as things were looking exceptionally grim in the ER, his son Jarrell shouted, "Dad!" And in that exact fraction of a second, Melvyn's hand twitched. That tiny spark of life kept the medical team fighting, and by 1900 hours, he woke up in the ICU, completely paralyzed on his right side. The medical impossibility of his survival and his subsequent recovery really cannot be overstated. His neurosurgeon actually went on record officially calling it the third miraculous incident of his entire career. And what gives this verdict incredible credibility? That neurosurgeon was actually a family member who had been the very first doctor on the scene, literally preparing for the absolute worst. Section 2. When tactics hit zero. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when the guardian standard is completely stripped away. Think about his past corporate reality, constantly dictating security protocols, demanding executive accountability, hiding behind impressive titles. Now contrast that with the brutal reality of the ICU, 0% power, slurred speech, severe right side paralysis. You can't exactly use a security badge to negotiate with a brain bleed, right? Think of it like your smartphone. We all know that universal feeling of dread when the battery hits 0% and the screen just goes black. It's totally dead. Well, Melvyn uses this exact metaphor to explain what happens when your physical strength, your wealth, your reputation, and your professional expertise are completely depleted. So I have a question for you, a real talk moment right here. What happens when the bomb threat is inside your own skin? If you're a high-achieving executive or a provider who's just used to always being the strong one, this really challenges us to deeply consider our own absolute vulnerability. Section 3. The Oration Blueprint. When his physical defenses failed, Melvyn had to change tactics. So he deployed ancient Hebrew names of God directly from his hospital bed. And he didn't use them as religious trivia. They were a tactical lifeline. First up is Yahweh Rapha, meaning the Lord who heals. As Melvyn stared at his numb, totally unresponsive right arm, he used this name as a literal tactical command. When his physical armor completely failed, he actively combated the paralysis by calling on this specific name, choosing to trust the healer over the grim medical scans. Then there's Yahweh Shalom. The Lord is peace. If you've ever been in an ICU, you know it's incredibly stressful. It's this overwhelming symphony of mechanical anxiety, constant alarms, and urgency that Melvyn actually calls a kill zone. He describes how invoking this name physically lowered the cortisol of his soul. It replaced his professional, high-stress crisis management with a supernatural, stabilizing peace. So the crucial point is how he utilized Yahweh Nissi, the Lord my banner. Now, in security and military terms, a banner is an assembly point in the middle of battlefield chaos. Melvyn explains that claiming this name is like planting a flag of victory right in the middle of a psychological ambush of despair. He was declaring ownership of his recovery, even when his physical knees were literally buckling. Section 4. Power of Strategic Silence. We really have to consider the massive communication breakdown that comes with a severe stroke. What does a man of words, an author of 50 books, do when his speech is severely slurred? Well, he pivots. He flipped his slurred speech from a massive vulnerability into a tactical advantage by practicing what he calls noise discipline. Instead of fighting his inability to speak clearly, he embraced strategic silence. He describes this as the art of abiding, simply remaining in presence when you have absolutely zero words left to negotiate your survival. And out of this silence, he developed an emergency protocol, the one-breath oration. This is for when you're in so much crisis you literally only have enough air for 3 words. Step 1, Yahweh Shema, acknowledging presence. Step 2, Yahweh Shalom, requesting peace. Step 3, El Chai, calling on the living God. It is an incredibly concise, tactical survival breath. Section 5, the 30-day deployment. Here, the source material shifts gears from a miraculous survival story to a concrete, actionable legacy that anyone can use to build resilience. Melvyn outlines this deployment in 4 phases over a month. Days 1 through 7 focus on building a foundation of surrender. Days 8 through 15 are all about internal reconstruction. Days 16 through 22 tackle the front line of external pressures. And finally, days 23 through 30 focus on total empowerment. It's fascinating because it takes deeply spiritual, internal surrender and translates it into a highly systematic, daily tactical log. Now, what's really interesting about this is the concept of ancestral intelligence. Melvyn realized his corporate security systems were temporal, right? But the spiritual resilience that saved him was eternal. So he wrote letters directly to his granddaughters, Marielle, Margot, and Astrid, who he calls the Guardian Vanguard. He wanted to explicitly pass down the spiritual DNA of survival so this intelligence outlives him. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. If your physical and mental strength hits 0% today, what is your ultimate backup plan? Melvyn Valenzuela's story challenges all of us to brutally reevaluate our own illusions of control. And maybe, just maybe, it inspires us to prepare a lifeline for the day our own tactics fail.